The legislators led by Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah supported the bill, criticizing the opposition for rejecting the bill which was in Azimio's manifesto in the run-up to 2022 elections.
Honorable Speaker, I support this bill. But Honorable Speaker, the vilification has been informed by misinformation, a lot of propaganda, a lot of insinuations and disinformation of things that are not even in the bill.
Taken to the floor, Finance Committee and Molo Member of Parliament Kuria Kimani defended the bill, saying that the 1.5% proposed housing levy is in order. Kimani said the levy had been reduced from 3 to 1.5% to prevent discrimination against low-income earners.
Hopefully, our good idea can give birth to a great idea, and that great idea can give birth to the greatest ideas.
In a sharp criticism of the bill, Migori Women Representative Fatuma Mohamed faulted Kenya Kwanza for not considering public opinions on the 1.5% housing levy. She said the finance bill did not undergo proper public participation.
Every speaker who is supporting the motion is saying that we have a lot of public debt. What you are not telling us is what informed this public debt.
The Finance Bill 2023, which was amended by the National Assembly Finance and Planning Committee and officially tabled on Tuesday 6 to raise 311 billion Kenyan shillings, which is 100 billion Kenyan shillings higher than the initial bill. The Finance and National Planning Committee amended to reduce the housing levy tax from 3% to 1.5%, a contribution that will be made only by the employer and not both the employer and employee.
Fair of the society and the just government of the people of Kenya, I rise to oppose. It is our business as a the representative of this house to make sure that our people live happily, improve their welfare, and make them feel they are sovereign according to the Constitution of Kenya.
Every speaker who is supporting the motion is saying that we have a lot of public debt. What you are not telling us is what informed this public debt.
The amended bill also proposes to reduce digital levy on content creators to 5% from 15%, double VAT on petroleum products from 8% to 16%, and increase rental income tax from proposed 7.5% back to 10%. President William Ruto will assent to the bill if it passes through the heated debate between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza in Parliament.
Total number of votes cast 257. The ayes 176. The nays 81. Abstentions nil. The of the vote is that the ayes have it.
Victor Enzobeli for
the nurses, the doctors, the hawkers, among others, to ask themselves, does this budget serve your welfare?
This budget, which is clearly anti-people, Azimio will be busy taking the next steps. We are reminding Kenyans, this budget will hurt them where it matters most: food, medicine, fuel, cost of living, and many more, as has been outlined. We are reminding Kenyans they are not helpless. The Constitution gives you sovereignty. Let us wait, and if the voices of the people are not heard, people must exercise their sovereignty.
Now, tax and economic experts are now warning that the move to settle at 16% of VAT on fuel will immediately put the cost of living on an upward trajectory. Hit hard the manufacturing industry, leading to mass layoffs as well as scare away investors in the country. According to the Federation, the move to introduce several taxes on Kenyans at a go will also choke them, threatening the financing of the 4.4 trillion shillings budget in the next financial year.
Of public transportation, the fares will go up. That's the first thing. But then remember, for any agricultural produce to be lifted from the farm to the market, is normally transported. That impact will also obviously be translated to the price of food items. When it comes to manufacturing, So that's an added cost that will come towards the price of commodities from a manufacturing point of view. And obviously the issue of the cost of power and electricity is one of the deterrents to a lot of investments in Kenya. What certainty or what assurances or what safeguards are in place to ensure that the funds under this housing fund are properly managed and there is accountability to the use of these funds, and the assurance that each and every person who has contributed to the fund will actually get their money back. Is it to the 5% that is normally paid on a withholding tax basis, but have them declare the tax at the end of the year, and any differential of tax on gains, then they should subject it to tax. Any digital content creators who are non-residents, let them pay the non-resident rate of withholding tax of 20%.
Kenya can do better, but I think it's just a focus on the right areas. What is Kenya good at? Kenya is good at agriculture. Kenya is good at tourism, because if we retain our talent in Kenya, we can really grow our economy. There could be various solutions. One is we could ask for a debt relief. Second issue is we could ask for a debt restructuring. But remember, when you do a debt restructuring, the debt still has to be paid. The issue is that you can go to the market, you can go for refinance.
Now to some good news of consumers across the country. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, on Wednesday evening, June 14th, released fuel prices taking effect from midnight. In the new review, a litre of super petrol was reduced by 0.66 shillings and will retail at 182.04 shillings. Diesel, on the other hand, will retail at 167.28 shillings. After being reduced by 1.12 shillings. However, the price of kerosene was increased by 0.35 shillings and will be retailing at 161.48 per litre for the next month. In Mombasa, a litre of super petrol will retail at 179 shillings, while diesel will be sold at 164.4 shillings, and a litre of kerosene in the coastal county will go for 158.65 shillings. The authority added that the new prices also factored in the 8% value-added tax VAT stipulated in the Finance Act of 2018 and the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2020. Now, fire has razed down businesses at Mutindwa Market in Buruburu, Nairobi on Wednesday. According to the traders, the fire broke out at 2 a.m. in the morning, and the traders who are not able to contain the fire say that they had to watch their property turn into ashes as they waited for firefighters to respond to their plea. The entrepreneurs have decried the delay by firefighters, saying that if they responded early, the traders could have salvaged some of their property. Sylvia Kemunto reports.
A somber mood engulfed Mutindwa Market on 14th June, Wednesday morning, as fire razed down the market stalls, destroying property. The cause of the fire is yet to be determined by the authorities, even as residents and some of the business people around the area speculate that the fire was caused by an electricity fault or an abandoned stove in one of the hotels. Speaking to some of the shop owners, they say that the fire broke out around 2 a.m., with the flames quickly spreading around the area, and not even the effort of the fire brigade, who did not arrive on time, was enough to salvage the property.
Fununo mara ni stima, fununo mara ni watu binafsi. Naona mali pia watu wanapata kidogo, labda maybe kuna watu wa wivu ama kitu kama hiyo. Sasa bado tumechanganyikiwa, ndio maana yake tumekaa hapa. Tunataka kujua ni nini imefanyika. Hatuna news yoyote yenye inaturidhisha ni nini.
Kwa majina naitwa Silvano. Mimi ni mfanyabiashara wa hii area Mutindwa Market, na kila mtu kwa mkia siku hii ya leo ni Wednesday, tumeshindwa nini imehappen, cause mimi nimepigiwa simu karibia saa 8 wakituambia, nikiambiwa soko imechomeka, so kidogo au masaibu sijui nini imealeta kabisa. Yes.
Wewe ni mfanyikazi hapa?
Kazi hapa. Nimepoteza a lot. Kulingana na kupiga hesabu yangu nimepoteza karibia 1600. Kwanza mazee, hii nini yetu ya kuzima moto hapa Nairobi County kidogo, bwana Sakaja kidogo anafaa angalie sana kulingana na vile watu wamekuja hapa karibia saa ngapi, saa 9 saa 10, alafu wanakuja na gari moja hivi haina maji, moto iko imechoma vibanda hivi, wanakuja hiyo masaa alafu wanarudi, yani ati hawana maji. Gavana Sakaja kidogo anafaa angalia mambo kuzingatia emergency zikitokea, kukuwe na uwezo wa kukimbiliza hiyo emergency.
Only one shop survived the destruction, and now business people, they are asking the government to intervene and compensate them to enable them to return to normal livelihood.
So kuanzishwa hadi sasa tujabainisha ni ilianzishwa na nini, na kwa sasa tumesema tutaka kunyosha vidole vya lawama kwa sababu kuna shukiwa, huenda ikawa ni nyaya za stima, huenda ikawa ni mtu ameanzisha, ama ikawa ni labda zile hoteli huwa zinafanya vyakula huku, labda mtu aliwacha marago yake kichemka overnight, inaweza kuwa pia imesababisha moto, lakini kiini haswa hakuna mtu anajua, manake ilifanyika usiku wa manane. So ndio tukasema let us not speculate. Kama vile Madam OCPD ametupa hakikisho wanataka kufanya uchunguzi, sasa iko kwa mkono yao, wao ndio watatubainishia inaweza kulisababishwa na nini.
Reporting from EBN TV, Cynthia.
Now, elsewhere in another market, Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga on Wednesday visited Toy Market in Kibra after the costly weekend fire incident. The opposition chief, who was accompanied by local leaders, went to assess the damages caused during the inferno. It is believed properties worth millions were destroyed in the incident that occurred on Sunday at around 2 a.m. The real cause of the fire remains unclear, and the residents suspect that a possible electric fault might have sparked the fire. DCI detectives had also commenced investigations to establish the cause of the fire. The detectives have collected ash samples for analysis.
Kama walimu hajapata mshahara, umeona hiyo? Walisema Uhuru aliwacha hazina kama iko wazi. Miezi 8 sasa ikiwa kama wanarogota ushuru, hiyo pesa imeenda wapi? So nasema wanataka kuzidisha ushuru na kujenga manyumba. Manyumba zilikuwa zinajengwa hata ile ushuru ya Uhuru. Kujenga nyumba kwa maskini mimi ndio nilileta. Slum upgrading program. Nilipokuwa mimi waziri wa barabara na ujenzi na manyumba, ndio nilileta mambo ya kujenga manyumba kwa maskini. Tukasema tuanze hapa Kibra. Wakaenda mahakamani, wakasimamisha hapa na pale, mpaka baadaye tulipopita namna hii, tulianza pale huko chini. Tuliwacha mpaka huko chini. Tulileta ushuru. Tulizidisha ushuru. Tulianza kujenga bila ushuru. Hiyo ushuru kama unataka kuleta, kwanza watu waketi chini wazungumuze, waelewane vizuri. Unasema hii ni wewe unatozwa kwa sababu wewe unataka ujengewe nyumba, lakini mwajiri wako anatoa kwa sababu gani? Nyumba gani ambayo anataka? Sasa there must be a national dialogue to discuss and to agree so that we even put infrastructure in place. Hii pesa ambayo unataka kutoza watu inaenda kwa zina gani? Inaenda wapi? Haya yote hakuna mpango ambao walikuwa wameweka hapo sawa sawa. Kwa hivyo sisi tumesema hiyo tumepinga. Na tumepinga mpango mengi ambayo jamaa wameweka kuzidisha ushuru. Shida ya Kenya sio idadi ya ushuru ambayo inatozwa. Shida ni wizi wa mali. Pesa ikiingia pale inaenda kwa mfuko ya watu binafsi. Hata ukiweka maradufu bado hiyo pesa haitapatikana. Sasa tumeambia jamaa, shikeni wale wezi, zibani pale zile mashimo pale ambayo pesa inavuja, na pesa itakuwa iko ya kutosha. Hiyo ni mpango ambayo Bwana Magufuli alifanya kule Tanzania na kainua nayo uchumi kule Tanzania. Sisi kama tungekuwa tumeshika wakati huu, mambo yangekuwa tofauti kabisa. Lakini hawa jamaa ni mayatima ya Nyayo.
Now, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka has called for an end to the conflict surrounding the reconciliation talks between the government and the opposition party. Addressing residents of Mitaboni at Miumbuni Secondary School in Machakos County, Kalonzo Musyoka said he cannot participate in the 2027 elections with an electoral commission elected by one side. In addition, Kalonzo explained that the bipartisan talks were stopped after the Rarieda Member of Parliament Otiende Amolo wrote to the Kenya Kwanza affiliation regarding the issue. Now, the leader of the Wiper Party said that he cannot be involved in a stolen election as has happened in the last 3 elections.
Lazima kuwe na mambo ya kufanya hivi. Bila kuwa na electoral commission mamlakani haiwezekani. So tuliunda kamati Kenya kuisha hawa Kenya Kwanza waka KK kwanza wakatoa watu 7, tukatoa watu 7. Alafu wakaenda kule, the last time nilicheck walikuwa waanze kazi wakakubaliana, lakini team leader wa Azimio Senator Mheshimiwa Senior Counsel Otiende akaandika barua, mwenzake wa Kenya Kwanza akakataa kuijibu, and the issue was wasimamishe kazi ya kutafuta makamishna wapya pamoja na mwenyekiti wao. Hatuwezi kuwa na Chebukati mwingine Kenya hii. Ile Chebukati
alone that you are going to descend to this finance bill. Let your conscience guide you. Don't go by the numbers, because those numbers are deceitful and they are not honest.
Wote kutoka kila eneo 47 counties tuangushe hii finance bill ndio iende itengenezwe irudi ikiwa nzuri, ili mwananchi wa kawaida aweze kufaidika. Na naomba mwananchi pia, ule mbunge wa kwako ambaye atapitisha hii finance bill, we deal na yeye akija huko ground.
So at that point, ladies and gentlemen, allow us to take a quick breather. But when we come back, we'll be taking a look at the newspapers, what is making headlines. The Standard talks about the budget, as well as the Daily Nation. And the Star reveals about 8.5 million shillings was spent in hospitality at State House. So this and much more after the break. We'll be taking a look at the newspapers. Stay with us.
Faith for today is a show to just look at what is going on in your life and what needs the intervention of God in your life.
Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the proof of things we do not see.
We are here for you. We are not here only for ourselves.
We are live every Tuesday and Thursday from 9 a.m. We boost your faith.
It is time to revive your faith.
Faith is for now, faith is for today. God has given us the breath of life.
Your faith today, live with Reverend Felix Kavoi.
Bwana Yesu asifiwe, watazamaji wa EBN. Kwa majina naitwa Pastor Julius Mutuko, na nataka kukaribisha kwa kipindi ambacho tutakuwa tukisikiliza neno la Mungu kila siku ya Ijumaa na Jumamosi kuanzia saa 3:30 jioni hadi saa 4:30 kila siku kwa lisali moja, na hivyo tukiangazia true worship ama kuabudu halisi, ambapo tukiangalia Biblia kitabu cha Yohana 4:23-24, Yesu alipokuwa akiongea na mwanamke Msamaria, alimwambia wakati unakuja ambapo watu watamwabudu Baba katika roho na kweli.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. You're watching Morning Live. It is about time we get into the newspapers, what is making headlines, who is saying what and why. And this is a very special day because we're expecting the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, to take to the floor of the National Assembly and read the budget, first one for that matter, under the President William Ruto's administration. So there's some of the key things that you need to know that will affect you directly. And of course, what is happening across the counties, how does the budget, be distributed across the county, and then as well as the national government. And the Standard has a very good display of that. And so we'll get straight into the Standard. Inside Ruto's budget, that is how it reads. Now, all eyes on President William Ruto's top money man as he presents his maiden budget in Parliament this afternoon, even as focus remains on soaring cost of living and political battle to meet expectations of quote-unquote hustlers, a demographic at the heart of state's campaign into power last year. And that is what the Standard is reading this morning. Now, the key numbers that you need to know: the recurrent expenditure stands at 1.4 trillion shillings. The development expenditure, 714 billion shillings. When I say recurrent expenditure, basically I mean money that goes to ministries, state departments, and just money that revolves within the national government. So that is what I call the recurrent expenditure. What is called, not I call, what is called the recurrent expenditure, which stands at 1.4 trillion shillings. Development expenditure, 714 billion shillings, money that is meant to build roads, schools, hospitals, stands at 714 billion shillings. And then the budget deficit, 720 billion shillings. What we are lacking, and the question is, or rather what we call a negative. So we have at 720 billion shillings. Now, how do we feel that? That is the question that has really led us to the point of the increased taxes, perhaps. How do we fill this gap of 720 billion shillings, what we call the budget deficit? Now, how is this cash shared out? 2.16 trillion shillings will go to the national government. County governments will get 385.4 billion. Parliament will get 40.4 billion, and the judiciary will get 22.9 billion Kenyan shillings. Other key figures that you need to know is the current national debt, which leaves the government with only 400 billion shillings borrowing window against a 720 billion shillings budget, stands at 9.6 trillion shillings. That is the current national debt, 9.6 trillion shillings. The debt ceiling, meaning the farthest we can go as a country in terms of borrowing, stands at 10 trillion shillings. So we're basically 0.4 billion shillings shy away from the debt ceiling. Now, key amendments: excise duty on mobile phone money transfers down from an initial proposed 15% to 12%. The new withholding tax on digital content monetization down from 15% to 5%. Housing fund levy down from 3% to 1.5%. But VAT, value added tax on petroleum products, still remains at 16% after an increase from 8%. Now, you and I know the essential of petroleum products, which are at the center of so many services as well as price of products. So in the next few weeks and months, we'll have to take a comparison of just what the price of unga is now and what the price of unga will be then, and then the price of other commodities such as sugar, cooking oil. Talk about rice as well, what it is now and what it will be then following the value added tax. Now remember, this budget takes effect from July 1st. The financial year budget of 2022-2023 ends on June 30th. And then the budget that we are currently debating, which is 2023-2024, takes effect from July 1st. So following the recommendations and amendments, and subsequently the passing of the bill at the National Assembly. Now, what these proposals have been put up on the table, or what will be read by the National Assembly, by the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, will take effect from the month of July. So then, and only then, can we start to make comparisons of what the products are costing now and what they will cost then. So the key figures that you need to take into consideration: the recurrent expenditure 1.4 trillion, the budget deficit stands at 720 billion, the development expenditure stands at 740 billion shillings, and like I've said, this 720 billion shillings budget deficit needs to be filled. What will it be filled with? Is it the taxes that have been increased, or subsequently borrowing? Either it's, local borrowing, or what we call foreign borrowing or international borrowing, where you get the organizations or banks like the IMF, the World Bank, lending money to Kenya, which of course comes with stricter restrictions or debt terms that continue to hurt the country. And the national debt currently stands at 9.6 trillion shillings. The debt ceiling stands at 10 trillion shillings, a leeway of 400 billion shillings. Which means we could get 400 billion shillings from somewhere, but the budget deficit will remain at 720 billion Kenyan shillings. Now, there's a headline on the Standard that reads, Kenyans hopeful Ruto's election pledges will be met in budget. Now, what are some of the allocations? The Office of the President has been allocated 11 billion shillings. Office of the Deputy President has been allocated 3.7 billion shillings. Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, has been allocated 648 million shillings. Now, State Department for Interior Security and National Administration, 26 billion shillings. Ministry of Defense, 143 billion. State Department for Higher Education, 117 billion. State Department for Basic Education, 135 billion. National Treasury, 130 billion. State Department for Medical Services, 116 billion. State Department for Roads, 245 billion shillings. And subsequently, State Department for Transport has been allocated 60 billion shillings. Now, whatever you're hoping that the president pledged during the election cycle should fall somewhere within this budget, whether it's, a smooth transition of CBC curriculum, it should fall under this budget. Whether you're talking about roads being built in the location that you're in, the rural roads that will be built, falls under this budget. State Department for Roads, 245 billion shillings. Whether you're talking about State Department for Higher Education, that is the HELB loans and all that falls under this particular budget. And so Kenyans are hopeful that Ruto's election pledges will be met in the budget. Now, the man that will be at the center of it is called Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. The Standard reads, from Central Bank of Kenya CBK to Treasury, this man Ndung'u, he was a professor of economics and worked as the central bank boss between 2007 and 2015. Basically does what Dr. Patrick Njoroge is doing right now as the CBK governor. He walks a tightrope as Kenyans bank on his policy measures to alleviate suffering of the people, and all eyes will be on him. This is the maiden budget that he will be reading under the President William Ruto's administration. So it is essential to kick it off on a right note, so that come 2027, we'll be looking back to just all this budget that have been read in the 5 or 4 years that the president will be, 5 years that he will be president, but 4 budgets that he will be overseeing. And so the president appointed the former CBK governor as the new Treasury Cabinet Secretary in September last year. He's a professor of economics, worked as a CBK boss between 2007 and 2015, walks a tightrope this morning as Kenyans bank on his policy measures to alleviate suffering. He has had a long, illustrious career in public and academic sectors, marked by hits and misses. Now, Ndung'u became the CBK boss in 2007, weathered a political storm in 2012 when Parliament tried to oust him over a currency turmoil in 2011. So that man will be making to the floor of the National Assembly at about 3 p.m. to read that budget. Now, record high fuel cost as new VAT plan stays. Like I said, 8% was the initial VAT on petroleum products, but has been increased to 16%. So a record high fuel cost as new VAT plan stays. Many sector players warn that the increase of fuel cost will raise price of all items and services. I need to take that again. Many sector players say or warn that the increase in fuel cost will raise price of all items and services. The government says VAT on petroleum products needs to be standardized. Remember, there is no fuel subsidy in place at the moment. The president did away with that last year, the moment he came in as the president of the Republic of Kenya. So record high fuel cost as new VAT plan stays. Now, there was a clash in Parliament, Ruto MPs versus Azimio MPs over the finance bill and the debate in the National Assembly. But get this, 257 legislators voted. 176 said yes to the bill. 81 said no to the bill. None of the parliament or members of parliament abstained. About more than 90 members of parliament, roughly 95 MPs were not in parliament to vote for this bill. Remember, the parliament consists of 349 MPs and only 257 of them voted. So where were the rest? That is the question that you need to be asking yourself. Now, Azimio have decried the increased taxes, saying it will burden Kenyans, but Ruto allies argue that this will end borrowing. Ishungwa, the majority leader in the National Assembly, Kimani Ishungwa, accuses Azimio MPs of whipping up public emotion through misrepresentation of facts. Now, the budget debate leaves hustlers a bit lost on the impact of new taxes. As the hustlers watching yesterday debate on Finance Bill 2023 in Parliament must have been cheerful at first, since every lawmaker claimed to be fighting for them, but ended up perplexed over who was truly on their side. The argument from Kenya Kwanza Alliance MPs was that their colleagues in the opposition did not want hustlers to prosper, and hence their dissent of the proposed housing levy, a deduction that started out as a contribution, not a tax, to a full-blown tax. So you've witnessed the change of language from it's not a tax, it's a contribution, to it's not a contribution, it's a levy, to it's not a levy, it's not a contribution, it's a tax. And so subsequently, at the end of the day, what you need to know is that the housing fund levy is a tax. It is not a contribution. And Azimio la Umoja One Kenya members of parliament were of the opinion that hustlers were duped by the utopia sold to them during the campaigns, and they were bound to suffer more if new tax measures are implemented. And so budget debate leaves hustlers a bit lost on the impact of new taxes. Now, another angle also to take in the finance bill is that the control of budget raises warning over county funds, and the COB has flagged low development across 47 counties, attributing it to dwindling revenue. According to the national and county government's budget and implementation review report of the third quarter for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, county governments are now forced to prioritize payment of salaries at the expense of development. What the COB, control of budget, is warning is that over the next couple of years, what you'll be seeing is that there is less development, but a lot of money will be going into paying salaries for county workers. And so she's raising that red flag, despite the fact that the 47 counties will share money allocated to them of about 385 billion Kenyan shillings. Now, the report released by the COB's Control of Budget, Margaret Nyakango, yesterday showed development in counties was at an all-time low, highlighting that of 239.7 billion released to counties in the last 9 months, only 29.7 billion was spent on development. Now, what we've also been seeing over the past couple of months is that the county governments have had a point to go on a go slow after failure by the National Treasury to release money to them owed over this, over a particular amount of months. And so this has been a big problem. They're working with huge debts in the counties. They're working with a huge wage bill in the counties. They've also had to work on the slow remittances of funds to the counties. But as well, how at this particular point do they also have to raise revenue sources for the counties? They cannot entirely depend on the national government. They also need to raise revenues through the counties. They also need to develop. They also need to, ensure that the manifesto they pledge to you of particular county is also done. So you can see the tightrope that the county governments are working on, particularly when it comes to devolved functions. Talk about health. There needs to be proper health care in your county. There also needs to be proper schools and roads in your county. So that is also something to watch. Now let's take a look at the Daily Nation, what it reads: Ruto tax pain points. Ruto tax pain points. Small businesses will be required to use electronic tax invoice management system to record sales. And Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u will today present Ruto's maiden budget as his administration gears up to deliver on his election promises. So if we could get to take a look at how the nation is looking like this morning. Ruto tax pain points. Now the VAT on fuel will be a pain point for Kenyans. The housing levy will be a pain point for Kenyans as the MPs amended the bill to lower from 3% to 5%. But they removed the 5,000 limit for both employees and employers, and workers will also not get a refund of the contribution. The turnover tax bracket of businesses eligible goes back to 1 million shillings from 500,000, but upper limit raised to 25 million shillings from 15 million. The turnover tax also increased 3% from 1%. Pay as you earn, paye. MPs create 2 new pay tax brands. Employees earning 500,000 shillings and 800,000 or between that to pay 32.5% pay as you earn, while those making over 800,000 Kenyan shillings will fork out 35%. Now those earning above 800,000 Kenyan shillings could include some of the chief executive officers of companies, the president himself, the deputy president, talk about the speakers of the 2 houses, the National Assembly and the Senate, talk about the county governors and judges, the chief justice, the deputy chief justice, some of the high court judges, some of the court of appeal judges. So basically all individuals earning above 800,000 Kenyan shillings will pay a pay as you earn of 35%, as those earning between 500,000 Kenyan shillings and 800,000 Kenyan shillings, that includes members of parliament, senators, will be paying that pay as you earn, or what we call the income tax, of about 35%. Now, small traders at risk on bid to force them into the e-tax system. Stakeholders say the ATIMS poses a big risk to small-scale businesses, and the committee approved a proposal that only invoices generated through ATIMs will be accepted for tax purposes. Entrepreneurs are facing tough times ahead following Parliament's approval of the proposal by the KRA to have the smallest of businesses brought under the tax net through a requirement that they use the electronic tax invoice management system to record sales. This would provide KRA with a 24-hour view of their operations, seeing transactions as they happened in order to tax them. Now, that is largely what we're expecting from that bill. I've tried to cover as much as possible. It's such a huge bill, 85 clauses, but those are the key issues that you need to know that will be in the bill that will affect you directly or indirectly, as well as what is happening around you, perhaps in your counties or in the national government as well. Now, the Star reads, report, State House spent 8.5 million shillings daily on hospitality. Almost 1.5 billion shillings gobbled up by the Kenya Kwanza administration. The president has been hosting dignitaries and clerics, and that has gobbled about 1.5 billion shillings hospitality. When you talk about hospitality, basically it's such a huge area, and it has been very much well illustrated on the Star this morning. Now, in the 9 months that he has been in office, domestic travel has been 9.3 billion shillings. Foreign travel has been 4.6 billion shillings, hospitality 6.1 billion, rentals 8.9 billion, training 3.8 billion, vehicle maintenance 1.3 billion, and global spend has been 886 billion Kenyan shillings. Now, State House has spent an average of 8.3 million shillings daily on hospitality in the first 6 months of President William Ruto's presidency, a new report shows. Now, the report by the Controller of Budget, Margaret Nyakango, shows that the Office of the President has consumed more than 1.5 billion shillings in the first 9 months of the current budget cycle. By the time the former President Uhuru Kenyatta handed over power in September, State House had spent only 27 million shillings on hospitality. This means almost 1.5 billion shillings has been gobbled up by the current administration. Now, for the referenced 180 days, the daily rate on the 1.5 billion translates to 8.3 million shillings per year. And so that is the big report from the Controller of Budget of just what has been happening at State House. Now, also earlier we played a clip on the opposition, and Raila says there's a plan to unveil a parallel budget, tells people to wait next action. Now, the contents of the parallel budget have not been revealed. When it will be announced has also not been revealed. But what they say is that they will be making a people's budget. Now, Azimio leader is also set to unveil that parallel people's budget, and the opposition warns that the proposed tax measures are punitive and will condemn Kenyans to untold suffering. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya urged Kenyans not to give up, but to be on standby for a major pushback with the government if members of parliament pass the proposed punitive tax measures, to which they did. They passed the finance bill yesterday. So that is also something that we'll be looking forward to see how it develops, what this parallel budget will look like. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is largely what is happening on the newspapers this morning. The headline on the Star: State House spent 8.5 million shillings daily on hospitality. Also, change of guard at the National Intelligence Service, which is NIS, as Nurdin Haji was sworn in. Now, Ruto to Haji, he says, use your intelligence skills to deliver on that particular role. Also, big blow to betting sugar importers and media in the new budget. Betting sugar importers and media in the new budget, who are also have to deal with the taxes that have been put up in place. Now, farmers, households using cooking gas, pharmaceutical farms and beauty product merchants have won big in President William Ruto's concessions on the proposed taxes to fund the budget. However, the media, sugar importers, betting firms and civil servants have lost big in the wake of the Finance Committee declining their petition to amend the provisions which stand to make life difficult for respective industries. Also, top of the page on the Daily Nation, dilemma as Mackenzie Church faithfuls extend fast in custody centers, even as the state is in a quandary following revelations that both victims rescued from the Shakahola forest and suspects arrested alongside Pastor Paul Mackenzie are fasting in police custody and in rescue centers. There's one of them who could not literally walk to the courthouse due to the fasting. So there's a dilemma. There's humanity on one side, but there's also they need also to be answerable on the other side. So what do they do? Harambee Stars revel in win over lowly Pakistan. Harambee Stars won 1-0 at a friendly match in Mauritius where they played against Pakistan. Top of the page as well, Nation, NHIF cancels 7 billion shillings tender after an expose and the contract for civil servants cover. And then finally, the Standard, which reads inside Ruto's budget. I gave you the numbers. The total budget or the amount of that budget is 3.6 trillion shillings. We're looking at 1.5 trillion shillings recurrent expenditure, 714 billion shillings development expenditure, as well as a budget deficit of 720 billion shillings. Now, the key organizations, the State Department, have also managed to read some of them to you. But largely, the national government will get 2.16 trillion, the highest, followed by the county governments at 385 billion. Parliament will get 40.4 billion, as the judiciary will get 22.99 billion shillings. Top of the page as well, the Standard, President's aide gunning for top global job. Trump in big fight for his life. He still has got many cases in court, was interdicted the other day. He's one of the top contenders for the US presidential elections for 2024. And then marathon big shots miss out as the country, Kenya, prepares for World Athletics in Budapest, which begin in August. Now, those are the stories making headlines this morning. Now, I know you're wondering, do we have a guest today in studio to have a conversation on some of these issues? Well, we could have, but unfortunately, our guest this morning was not able to make it. That is Jacob Maga, financial consultant, who would have taken us through what these new proposals mean for you, how they affect your pocket in various sectors that have been raised, including the digital content creators, the VAT on fuel, and the income tax as well, and the turnover tax for your businesses. But unfortunately, Jacob Maga, financial consultant, was not able to make it. But regardless, I hope that you're up to date with what is making headlines across the newspapers. EBN TV will be giving you a wall-to-wall coverage of the budget as beginning 1 p.m. When the CS for National